Greetings and salutations, Scribblers. I'm Katie, the founder and CEO of the Scribbler's Den, your online source for writing craft and writing community. I am joined today by the fabulous Oat Milk. She is an editor-in-chief here at the Scribbler's Den. She oversees all the videos, and as you can see, she is doing very important supervisor work right now. Will she stay for the whole video? Who knows? We're going to find out. All right, so in last week's video, we chatted about accepting feedback and working to process it logically rather than taking it personally and allowing your emotions to interfere with your growth as a writer. This week, we're going to continue to discuss feedback and take a look at how to prioritize the various elements to really streamline your revision process. So grab your beverage of choice and let's dive in. Getting an 11-page edit letter or a document returned to you with hundreds of inline comments can feel overwhelming. You're trying to review it, take it all in, and just being bombarded from every angle with a million things you need to fix in your manuscript. It can feel really overwhelming, and even if you started right then, you'll never make it through all the revisions that you need to. You just have this like overwhelming sense of this insurmountable task. I'm going to stop you right there. I'm going to have you take a deep breath. And I'm going to have us go through this process of kind of figuring out your way forward and what you can do in a way that best fits your work methods and styles. But you need to process what needs done and then make a plan, whatever that's going to look like, right? That is going to be the key here. So last week, we talked about processing that feedback. It may take a few days, a few weeks, or even a month or two. For me, I know that originally when I first started getting feedback, it would take me a week or two to really process it. And then sometimes like a month later, all of a sudden I'd be like, oh wait, I think I finally understand this because my brain had finally caught up and dealt with everything. Now I'm much faster because I have that process because I'm getting better at it. I've been doing it more. So I can usually take an edit letter and within 2 days, 3 days at the most, usually I feel like I've gotten like all the points out of it and I know what I'm doing. So no matter how long it takes for you, processing that feedback is going to give you the insight that you need to evaluate what does and doesn't need revised and the best order to do it in. So this, again, that's just something that you're going to learn as you go, and it's going to adapt, right? You're always going to be evolving in your method for how you do that. There are a lot of different ways to do it, and this is kind of how I use it. Once I've processed my feedback, this is what I do in order to make a plan that makes logical sense to me. And that prevents me from wasting time revising something that will likely end up being changed or cut from the manuscript entirely. So to start with, I like to work with the edits and changes that will have the biggest ripple effect down to the ones that have little to no impact on the bigger elements of the story. So the first thing that I do is I will compile my feedback. I try to get 3 to 5 people to read for me and give me that feedback. If I have more than that, then I feel like I start to get too many conflicting ideas. And I'm very specific about who those 3 to 5 people are. They're not just random people that I've met online and I'm like, oh, hey, I've never actually talked to you before, but will you read this? I'm they're people I've worked with before, okay, who know my writing and I know them and they know me, I know their critique style, so I know they're going to vibe with the vision that I have for the manuscript. And that's really important. There is a time when I do look for outside readers, but that is after 2 or 3 revisions. Like that is right before I'm about to query. That's when I look for somebody that maybe doesn't know me so well. And I'll have, if I can, I'd like to have like a friend like set me up with like a secret reader. And they get my manuscript and they read it and they give their feedback and I have no idea who they are. And that's always kind of cool because it's just like a random person. And it'll be very much reader based rather than someone who reads and writes. So once I have all of those edit letters and I've kind of read through them, I will print out all of the edit letters and I get out my highlighter and a pen and I start marking them up. I read each one again and I go through this phase and I just highlight all the parts that really stand out to me and leave myself margin notes. If it's something more than one person points out, I note that in the margins too. My margin notes can be anything from a possible solution or edit or to me emphasizing that this is something that needs done. Or a reminder that if I tweak X, I'll need to tweak Y as well. So lots of just little tiny things for me, like as I start to filter through my thoughts and figure out what actually needs done. The next thing I do is once I've read and highlighted my feedback, my cat is purring, and it's just, cat purrs are the best thing, right? You can't hear it because it's very quiet, but as I'm petting her, I can feel the little purr on her rib cage, and it's wonderful. It's very relaxing. Sorry, guys. All right. So once I have read and highlighted my feedback, I create an outline or a bulleted list. It kind of just depends on my mood. Sometimes it's a mix of both. And I write myself my own edit letter based on the feedback. So this really allows me to process what I want to do, why I want to do it, and hopefully how I plan to accomplish those edits. My own personal edit letters tend to be between 4 to 6 pages in length when I'm all done, and it becomes this detailed plan of what I want to accomplish and how. Once I have that sorted, then I go through and put it in order that deals with the biggest, most influential thing first. And this is the element that will this is the element that will have the biggest ripple effect and cause there to be the most changes in the story. So, for example, in my last manuscript, Harpy Girls, this was a huge shift in the setting and the order of events. So I narrowed the setting down to a single city from having been like this expansive continent where they really traveled. And then I reordered some of the events and I got rid of some. And those were the biggest changes. And because of that, it removed like a lot of the travel scenes, then these different moments that came in like later events that were now earlier had to be shifted because the characters wouldn't have been aware of those things. And it was a lot, right? I had to be very aware of what information was being shared when, since something they learned later had to stay later in the book. So even though I moved the circumstances around, I had to make sure what was actually happening, like the dialogue and the content were staying true to that piece of the story, right? And just getting rid of like outside locations. Oh, goodbye, oat milk. Thank you for joining us. And it had me doing a lot of really careful copying and pasting and getting things in the right order. And making those big structural changes made sense to do first before I went in and started refining character emotions or tweaking dialogue or the romance arc of the novel. Those were things that would have an effect throughout, but I couldn't have them advance and escalate correctly before I had the plot beats and the settings sorted. If I had tried to do the smaller things first, I would have wasted time perfecting them only to have them get rid of or tweak them again once I shifted the order around. So once I've done all that, and I have like the big structural pieces in place, the next step I take is to finally do those small things. And I'll do a search for maybe every time that I use a specific word and make sure that it actually fits, that it's something that needs to be done. Or if I have a phrase that I overuse. I don't know if I've mentioned this before in any of my videos, but once on a page I used the phrase "in her mind" 13 times on one page. This was back in my first manuscript, and I still think about that fondly all the time. My critique partner pointed that out to me, and I was so frustrated at the time that I think I tried to deny it. And she was like, "No, I've marked them all in red pen." So I couldn't. It was there. But again, these are all like kind of smaller things that I do at the end, because otherwise I'm doing line edits on bits and pieces that might be entirely cut, meaning that, again, I've kind of wasted my time on that. And I definitely want to streamline my writing process because I have a full-time job on top of that. I have to do all of the great things that adults get to do, like grocery shopping and chores and laundry and etc. So I really want to be able to streamline everything I can about my writing process. So my general order for prioritizing my revisions is to start with the bigger structural changes, whether it's moving events around, changing locations, or adding in another character's point of view. That was another huge edit that I did for Harpy Girls, is that I had a critique partner that said, "You know what, I think that you need to have a third point of view in this, and this is what it should be." And I was like, okay. So I had to rewrite a whole lot of moments from an entirely new point of view, and then shift things into other people's points of view, which meant figuring out all the different ways of sharing information I needed. And that was like a huge, again, structural moment, right? And for me, those big structural changes tend to be a bit sloppy as I just Frankenstein my manuscript back together after cutting it into pieces. And once I have those structural bits settled, I move to those smaller items like the emotional arcs or the banter, and I focus on making everything is escalating with the tension and the conflict, and that I haven't left a dynamic character moment too early before they've had a chance to experience that growth. So at that phase, once I have like the really big pieces, and I've started to move into those smaller ones, I return to my edit letter to make sure I've hit all the details that I wanted to for that aspect. And that edit letter that I've written myself, that was the compilation of everybody else's, really becomes like my to-do list. And I do my best when I stick to it. Doing my revisions this way means that I'm reading through my manuscript several times, with each time having a distinct focus where I'm only looking for a singular element. And this took a bit of work to learn how to do. A trick I've heard from other people, it's not something I've tried it and it does not work for me. But other people have said that sometimes if they work from the end of their manuscript back to the beginning rather than from beginning to end, it really jars your author brain from just filling in the gaps that you instinctively know, because you have to actively consider if the information you're reading has been set up for in the previous chapters. And it's a really cool concept. I have tried it. It is not for me, but it might be a strategy that you would want to use. I almost always work from the beginning to the end, and it has, for me, taken practice to learn to focus on just one main element and ignore all the rest. But each time it's becoming easier to do so, because I start to get into like, oh, I'm fixing this. I could just do some character work while I'm here. And I have to really tell myself, no, that's for later. Focus on one thing. So whether you choose to work from the front to back or back to front, having a plan in mind and focusing on those bigger structural issues before shifting to the smaller ones can really help to streamline your revision process. I also like doing it this way because I feel like the smaller edits are often more nuanced and my brain needs more time for ideas to percolate. So while I'm shifting chapters around or changing points of view, I'm slowly figuring out how to create character depth or increase the romantic tension. So that is my method for prioritizing feedback and applying it to my manuscript. I'd love to hear how you go about it, so please feel free to drop your method in the comments. I'd like to know. The Scribbler's Den has an amazing course that focuses on the revision process specifically, and it breaks it down into small, manageable chunks to help you get comfortable with the process, whether it's your first time revising or your 10th, and you're looking for strategies that can help. You can check that out at www.scribblersden.org/courses. And we'd love for you to be part of our community. So that is it for today. Have a fantastic week, and we will see you next time. Please like and subscribe. Happy writing, Scribblers.